I cooked dinner like always. Chicken soup, her favorite bowl with the small chip on the rim. I set it on the table and waited. At 7:14 my phone buzzed. The message said, "Don't wait. We're in quiet mode." I waited another hour. The soup went cold. The house filled with a silence I didn't recognize. When I finally picked up the mail, there was an envelope with a cheerful logo and a thank you note inside. The number printed there kept me awake all night. The next morning my phone lit up again. Another transfer. I left her a bowl of soup at 7. She texted back, "Don't wait. We're in quiet mode." The pot was still warm on the stove. The smell of chicken broth filling the kitchen. I ladled it into her favorite blue bowl, the one with a small chip on the rim, and set it on the counter. For 40 years this was routine. I cooked. She smiled. We ate together. Tonight the chair across from me stayed empty. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a neighbor's kids shouted as they chased each other down Maple Drive. Their laughter came through the open window, sharper in contrast to the silence of my house. At 7:14 my phone buzzed. Her name lit the screen. "Don't wait. We're in quiet mode." Quiet mode. Not "I'm late," not "save me a plate." Just that phrase. Like something rehearsed. I stared at the soup cooling in front of me. I typed back, "Are you coming home tonight?" The dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. The first time Linda mentioned the community circle, it sounded harmless. A women's book club, meeting at the community center on Oak Street. Potlucks, crafts, a ceramics class. She came home with a little clay vase, lopsided but proud, and I told her it was beautiful. But then came the phrases. Quiet mode. Protecting my energy. Contributing to the space. Words that didn't sound like her anymore. At first, I smiled. Retired life leaves too many hours to fill. If she'd found friends, good for her. Now the soup had gone cold, and the only voice in my kitchen was the microwave beeping when I reheated it for myself. By 8, the street outside had settled. Porch lights glowed across the neighborhood. Mr. Henderson's dog barked twice, then quieted. I sat at the table with my reheated soup and a slice of bread, staring at the empty chair. Her scarf was draped over it, floral, faintly carrying her perfume. But the scarf felt more present than she did. I picked up the mail pile. Junk flyers, a utility bill, and one envelope with Community Friends Association, printed in cheerful green letters. Inside, a thin statement. Annual contribution, $1,990. Thank you for your support. My name wasn't on it, just hers. But the checking account number was ours. The clock pushed toward 10. I rinsed her untouched bowl, the water running hot, steam fogging the kitchen window. Across the street, I could see through the neighbor's window, parents tucking kids into bed, a woman folding laundry, a man pouring himself a beer. Their normal life carried on. I wiped the counter dry and sat down with the envelope again. My hands felt older tonight. The skin loose. The veins rising. I held it up to the light, as if the paper itself might explain where my wife was and who she was becoming. It didn't. It only told me money had left our account without a word. Toward midnight, the door finally creaked open. She moved quietly, as if trying not to wake me. Though I was sitting right there in the living room. "Linda," I said softly. She hung her jacket, avoided my eyes. "We had extended circle tonight. You wouldn't understand. I wanted to ask what circle takes a married woman out until midnight on a Wednesday, but the words stayed behind my teeth. Instead, I held up the envelope. "Did you know about this?" She glanced at it, her expression unreadable. "That's not money, Christopher. That's air. That's what keeps us alive." Then she walked upstairs, leaving me with the envelope, the humming refrigerator, and a silence deeper than any quiet mode she practiced. The next morning, my banking app lit up. Transfer $12,000 Community Friends Association. The morning light came through the blinds in pale stripes across the kitchen table. I sat with a mug of coffee, the steam rising into the silence. Linda came downstairs, dressed neatly, not in anything unusual, just jeans and a sweater. She smelled faintly of lavender, something she had never worn before. "Busy day?" I asked. She didn't look at me. We have circle time, then a planning session. Circle time. Planning session. I stirred my coffee and listened to the spoon tapping the porcelain. These weren't her words. They belonged to someone else now. After she left, I opened the laptop. My banking app still had the transfer from last night on top. $12,000. Community Friends Association. I clicked deeper, scrolling through the last month. There it was. Smaller charges stacked one after another. $1,990. Annual contribution. $280 supplies donation. $75 space fee. None of these had my approval. All of them carried her name. I leaned back in the chair, the fridge humming behind me. Outside, the mail truck rattled down the street. Neighbors waved at each other. A dog barked. Life carried on in its familiar rhythm. Mine was shifting beneath my feet. By noon, I tried to call her, straight to voicemail. The message she recorded last year, cheerful, warm, didn't match the woman who walked out the door this morning. I drove past the community center on Oak Street. The lot was full of cars, mostly sedans, and SUVs like ours. Through the window, I saw a group at folding tables. They weren't dressed alike, not chanting, not strange. Just drinking tea, jotting notes, laughing quietly together. Ordinary, but the laughter didn't reach me. That evening, Sarah came by. She dropped her bag in the hallway and hugged me a little too tightly. "Dad, I've noticed things too," she said. "Mom's been different. Every time I ask her to visit, she says the house is too noisy." I poured her tea. We sat at the table, the ticking of the wall clock loud between us. I slid the printout across the table. The numbers glared back at us both. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. 12,000, I nodded, and smaller ones, every week. She stared down, then whispered, "It's not just a club, is it?" I didn't answer. Long after Sarah left, I stood at the sink, rinsing cups, the smell of dish soap thick in the air. Across the street, the Hendersons' porch light flicked on. Their laughter floated through the night as they clinked glasses. I felt like a ghost in my own neighborhood. I wiped my hands, sat at the table again, and stared at my phone. My thumb hovered over her contact. No message, no call, just waiting. At 11:06 p.m., the notification arrived. Transfer $4,200. Recipient, Community Friends Association. The soup bowl, with its chipped rim, still sat in the drying rack. This time I didn't bother putting it away. Another transfer, bigger than before. Somewhere tonight Linda was smiling, and I was the one paying for it. The next morning Linda was already gone when I came downstairs. Her coffee cup sat rinsed in the sink, turned upside down to dry. She'd left before dawn. The kitchen smelled faintly of lavender again. Not coffee, not bread, not her usual. I sat at the table with my phone and scrolled the banking app. The numbers stared back at me. Another transfer, $4,200 last night, added to the $12,000 from the day before. My throat tightened. For 40 years, Linda had managed the household bills. She paid utilities, groceries, car insurance. I trusted her with it all. My part was bringing in the paycheck. Hers was making the money stretch. I never thought I had to watch. Now, watching was all I could do. By mid-morning I called the bank. The line clicked. A voice answered. I explained the charges. My name, my account, my concern. The woman on the other end sounded polite, almost bored. "Mr. Collins, these are authorized transactions. Your wife is on the joint account. If she chooses to make transfers, that is within her rights." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Even 12,000 at once?" "Yes, sir." A pause. "We can't interfere in how account holders choose to use their funds." The line went silent after that. Only the faint buzz of the connection and my reflection in the dark screen of the microwave. At lunch, Sarah called. She was at work, whispering into the phone. "Dad, have you talked to her?" "She's busy," I said. I didn't tell her about the lavender, the early mornings, the quiet departures. "Please, don't wait too long. It feels like she's slipping," Sarah whispered. and then someone spoke to her in the background, and the line went dead. That night, I waited for Linda. I left the living room light on. The television was off. The house was too quiet. Outside, the Hendersons' house glowed with life. Their television flickered blue across the blinds. Kids' laughter spilled out onto the porch. Their dog barked when someone came to the door. At 10:30, I heard her key in the lock. She stepped inside, calm, serene, as if she hadn't been gone all day. She hung her jacket and started toward the stairs. "Linda," I said. She paused, hand on the railing. "Where were you?" "Circle went late. We planned an outreach event." "Do you know about the transfers? The bank?" Her face changed. Not angry, not guilty. Just distant. "That money isn't gone, Christopher. It's being used. It's part of something bigger than us." "Bigger than us?" My voice cracked before I caught it. She didn't answer. She just climbed the stairs, step by step, and closed the bedroom door behind her. I sat in the living room, staring at that door. For a moment I thought about following her, knocking, demanding answers. My hand even touched the banister, but my feet didn't move. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked, and the only sound from upstairs was silence. Near midnight, another notification lit my phone. "Transfer, $8,500, Community Friends Association." The bedroom door stayed closed. 3 days, 3 transfers, and a wife who no longer belonged to this house. The morning after the $8,000 transfer, I found a stack of envelopes on the kitchen counter. Linda had laid them neatly beside the fruit bowl. She was already gone, her car not in the driveway. The house smelled of coffee, but not the kind we used to drink. She had started buying herbal blends from the group mint, hibiscus, lavender. The scent lingered in the air, sharp and sweet, nothing like the dark roast that used to wake us. I picked up the top envelope. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't junk mail. It was a form, printed cleanly, with her name signed at the bottom in looping cursive. The title read, "Limited Power of Attorney Special." Below it, "Attorney in Fact, Daniel Reed." At first I thought it couldn't be real. The words looked official but vague. "For the limited purpose of paying household utilities, membership dues, and event logistics on behalf of the principal." It was notarized. The seal was faintly pressed into the paper, and a date in blue ink glared at me from the bottom corner. I pressed my thumb against the paper. My skin left a faint smudge. My wife had signed this. She had given strangers the right to handle what we had built for 40 years. The refrigerator hummed behind me. Outside, the garbage truck clattered down Maple Drive. Life went on, steady, indifferent. I folded the paper and put it back in the envelope, but the crease in the middle made it impossible to lie flat again. That afternoon I drove to the community center. Through the glass doors I could see them 10, maybe 12 people sitting at long folding tables. They looked ordinary, like parents waiting for a PTA meeting. A woman in a cardigan poured tea into mismatched mugs. Linda was there, laughing softly, leaning close to someone I didn't know. I stood outside for a long minute, the late autumn wind cutting through my jacket. Finally, I turned away. That night she came home later than usual. She moved quietly, set her bag down by the stairs. I waited in the living room with the envelope on the coffee table. "Linda," I said. She looked at the paper and then at me. For a second I thought she might explain, or even apologize. "It's just for convenience," she said calmly. "They help with things when I'm busy. You don't need to worry." Her voice was gentle, but her eyes slid past mine. "Convenience?" I asked. "Giving them the right to sign for us?" She picked up the envelope, tucked it under her arm, and headed upstairs. "You've always let me handle these things." "That hasn't changed." Her footsteps faded above me. I sat in the living room long after midnight, the lamp casting a pale circle on the floor. Across the street, a couple walked their dog, their breath visible in the cold night air. They held hands, spoke quietly, then disappeared inside. On my phone, a new alert blinked. Pending transaction $2,750. Vendor. Community Friends Association. The words blurred for a moment before they came into focus again. Somewhere, In a hall filled with folding tables and mismatched mugs, my wife was giving away more than money. The morning after I found the power of attorney form, I called Sarah. She came that evening with a folder under her arm. We sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where her mother used to set down plates of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the meals that meant family. Now there was only her folder, thick with bank printouts and a yellow legal pad. She spread the papers across the table. Dad, I pulled everything I could from the last 3 months. Look at this. I had given Sarah my login. She printed what I couldn't face alone. The numbers bled across the page. Transfers, donations, fees. Each line another cut. Sarah underlined them with her pen, her hand trembling. This is fraud, she whispered. It has to be. I wanted to believe her. Fraud meant someone had tricked Linda. Fraud meant there was still a chance to undo it. But the paper upstairs said otherwise. She had signed. She had given them the right. The bank flagged nothing. Joint account, daily limits intact. Authorized is authorized. The kitchen smelled of paper and ink, not food. The refrigerator hummed in the background. Outside, a neighbor's teenager bounced a basketball on the driveway, the hollow thump echoing against the evening air. Sarah looked at me, her eyes shining. We need a lawyer. The next day we sat in an office downtown. A narrow room with beige walls and diplomas in black frames. The attorney, a man in his 50s with tired eyes, scanned the papers in silence. He tapped his pen against the desk. Finally, he looked up. Mr. Collins? Your wife's signatures are all here. The documents are valid. The transfers are voluntary, but she doesn't understand what she's doing, I said. My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. She's competent, legally speaking. Unless you can prove coercion or incapacity, there's little ground to challenge. Sarah's hand gripped mine under the desk. I felt the strength in her fingers, but also her fear. The lawyer slid the papers back across the desk. I'm sorry. I see this more often than you'd think. That night I sat alone in the kitchen again. The lamp above the table cast a pale circle of light over the folder Sarah had left. The house smelled faintly of lavender from Linda's scarf on the back of the chair. Across the street, the Hendersons were celebrating something. Their house glowed with people, laughter spilling out when the door opened. A cake box sat on the hood of a car, candles visible through the window. I stared at their happiness, then back at the folder in front of me. My phone buzzed. Transfer, $15,000. Vendor, Community Friends Association. The number pulsed on the screen, almost alive. I pressed the phone to the table, face down, but the vibration kept humming against the wood. The morning after the $15,000 transfer, I woke to an empty bed. Her pillow was cold, the sheet folded back neatly as if she hadn't slept there at all. The air smelled faintly of her lavender lotion, the one she never used before the circle. Downstairs, the kitchen light was off. On the counter sat a single plate with crumbs of toast. She had eaten before I even woke. For 40 years, breakfast had been the two of us, coffee and conversation, the sound of the newspaper rustling. Now I was alone with the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking wall clock. By evening she came through the door carrying a bag of groceries I hadn't asked for. Kale, herbal teas, lentils. Not the food we used to eat. Not the things she once bought for family dinners. She set the bag down, her movements slow, almost graceful. Linda, I said. My voice sounded strange, even to me. She looked at me with a calm I couldn't reach. Do you realize what you're doing to us? I asked. To Sarah? To me? Her face didn't change. She pulled a scarf from the bag, folded it carefully. They're my family now, Christopher. They understand me in ways you never tried to. The words hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to speak. I wanted to remind her of our years together. The vacations. The Christmas mornings. The nights we sat on the porch listening to cicadas. But none of it came out. I stood there, watching her move through our kitchen, as if it belonged to someone else. That night I couldn't sleep. The bedroom felt too large, the mattress cold on her side. Through the window I saw the Hendersons across the street lights glowing, their teenage son practicing guitar badly, laughter spilling out of their living room. A family, imperfect but whole. I sat in the dark until my phone lit up on the nightstand. Another notification. Transfer, $6,800. Vendor, Community Friends Association. I didn't open it. I just let the glow fade back into darkness. The number burned into my eyes even after the screen went black. Somewhere, she was laughing with her new family. And I was nothing more than a ghost in the house we had built together. Sarah came over on Sunday morning. She wore her hair pulled back, no makeup, like she used to in high school when she wanted to talk seriously. She carried a grocery bag in one hand and a folder in the other. "Maybe if I bring breakfast, she'll sit down," Sarah said. We cooked together in the kitchen, the smell of bacon and eggs filling the house. For a moment, it almost felt normal, the way mornings used to be. The sound of the skillet, the hiss of oil, the clink of forks on plates. I wanted Linda to walk in and see us like this, to remember. When she came through the door, the smell of lavender followed her in. She looked at the table, at the plates set out, at Sarah waiting with a hopeful smile. "Mom," Sarah said softly, "sit down, eat with us." Linda didn't move. She hung her coat, folded it carefully, and placed it over the chair as if she hadn't heard. "Please." Sarah tried again. "We just want one breakfast." Like before, Linda turned her head. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Sarah, your energy is too heavy. I can't share meals when the atmosphere isn't right." Sarah froze. The fork slipped from her hand and hit the table with a sharp sound. "My energy?" she asked. "I'm your daughter." Linda's eyes softened, but not in the way I remembered. More like pity than love. "They feed me better than this." She walked upstairs without touching the food. Sarah sat down hard at the table. Her shoulders shook, but she wouldn't cry. She just stared at the eggs cooling on the plate. Across the street, the Hendersons came out with coffee cups, laughing with neighbors on their porch. A dog barked. Children rode bicycles past. The sound of life carried through the window while our kitchen sat in silence. Sarah finally whispered, "She doesn't see us anymore, Dad." I couldn't answer. My phone buzzed on the counter. Transfer, $9,400. Vendor, Community Friends Association. The skillet still smelled of bacon, but no one was hungry anymore. 2 days after the breakfast that ended in silence, I drove past the community center again. Cars lined the street, more than before. I parked across from the building and watched people carry in trays of food, bags of clothes, boxes stacked high. Through the glass doors I saw Linda. She was standing close to a man I didn't know, tall, in his 40s maybe, with short hair and a calm face. He rested a hand lightly on her shoulder as they spoke. She smiled at something he said, a smile I hadn't seen in years. I stayed in the car until the cold made my hands ache against the steering wheel. Then I started the engine and drove home. That evening, as the light faded, a car pulled into our driveway. It wasn't Linda's folder. The tall man stepped out, carrying a folder. He walked up to the porch and knocked. When I opened the door, he smiled politely, like a salesman who already knew the answer. "Mr. Collins? I'm Daniel. I work with your wife at the association." His voice was warm, practiced. He held out the folder. "She asked me to drop this off. Papers for her to sign at the center, just for convenience." I didn't take it. I kept my hands at my sides. "She could have told me herself," I said. Daniel kept smiling. "She's very busy. You must understand, she's doing important work now." Behind him, the streetlights flickered on. A couple walked their dog past the house, their laughter echoing down the quiet block. I looked back at him. His smile didn't move. His eyes didn't blink. "I won't sign anything," I said. He nodded, as if that didn't matter at all. He slipped the folder back under his arm. "It's not for you, really. Just so you're aware. Linda is moving forward, with or without your support." He turned and walked to his car. The taillights glowed red as he backed out of the driveway. I stood in the open doorway long after he was gone. The cold air moved through the house, raising the hairs on my arms. Upstairs, the bedroom was dark. Linda hadn't come home yet. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Transfer, $11,200. Vendor, Community Friends Association. I closed the door, but the night had already come inside. Sarah came over the next morning with her folder again. She set it on the kitchen table with more force than usual, the papers spilling slightly from the sides. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, but also from anger. "Dad," she said, opening the folder. "They've started the paperwork to move assets. If she signs one more form, the house could be in play." I looked at her, then around the kitchen. The chipped mug on the counter, the clock ticking above the fridge, the faint smell of coffee grounds. Every object felt fragile suddenly, as if it could vanish with a signature. Sarah pulled out a sheet and circled a line in red pen. "This isn't a clause. It's a quitclaim deed draft. See? Grantee is Community Friends Community Trust. There's even a line for your signature they'll try to pressure you for." She laid another document beside it. "And this one is a transfer on death deed to the same community trust. If she signs it alone, her share goes to them when she dies. Together, these cloud our title now and steal half later." She tapped the table. "This house." Her voice shook. She tried to steady it, but I could hear the fear underneath. I sat back in the chair, the wood pressing hard against my shoulders. 40 years of work, the mortgage paid, repairs made one by one, winters shoveled, summers painted. The weight of it sat in my chest. "She wouldn't take the house," I said quietly, though the words felt thin, already unconvincing. Sarah looked at me, eyes red. "She's not Mom anymore, Dad. She's theirs." The room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. That evening, I stood at the window as the Hendersons carried groceries inside, laughing with each other, their porch light glowing. Their world looked unshakable, walls solid, doors secure. Behind me, our living room felt hollow, the air colder than outside. At 9 o'clock, the front door opened. Linda walked in, her scarf pulled tight, her eyes distant. She didn't look at me as she passed through the hall. A folder was tucked under her arm, thicker than the one Daniel had carried. She went straight upstairs without a word. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Transfer, $13,700. Vendor. Community Friends Association. I stared at the number until it blurred. Then I looked at the ceiling, at the darkened room above where she had gone. For the first time, I wondered if I would lose not just my wife, but the house we built together. The night after Sarah's warning, I walked through the house long after Linda had gone upstairs. The lights were dim, the air carrying that faint lavender trace she left behind. My feet creaked against the old wooden floor as I passed the family photos on the wall. Smiling faces, Christmas mornings, birthdays, all staring back at me like strangers I used to know. In the study, I pulled open the bottom drawer of the old desk. Dust rose in the lamplight. Inside were tax folders, old receipts, passports. The paper felt brittle under my hands, the edges curled with age. I gathered the documents that still mattered: title to the house, insurance, the small savings account in my name only. I stacked them neatly, wrapped them in an old manila envelope. My fingers shook as I slid the drawer shut again, slower this time, careful not to make noise. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall. Outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping briefly across the curtains. Life moved out there, steady and unbothered. I carried the envelope to the basement, the air colder with each step down. In a corner behind the furnace, I found the metal box we hadn't touched in years. I placed the envelope inside, locked it, and set a folded blanket over the top. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like control. Not hope, just a sliver of resistance. The next morning, Linda came into the kitchen humming softly, her bag slung over her shoulder. She poured herself tea, not looking at me, not asking where Sarah was, not noticing the absence of the papers. "They're planning something big," she said suddenly, her eyes distant. "A retreat. A place where we can be together, away from all the noise." I nodded, though the words scraped inside me. She finished her tea, rinsed the cup, and left the house without another glance. I stood at the window as she drove away. Across the street, the Henderson kids were loading sports gear into their car, their father calling out, his voice clear and strong. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. Transfer. $17,600. Vendor. Community Friends Association. I pressed my hand against the cold glass of the window. The house felt like it was already slipping away. Sarah came by on a gray afternoon. The sky low and heavy. The air damp with the smell of rain. She carried her folder again, though now it was thinner. The pages inside worn from being opened too many times. She dropped it on the table and sat down across from me without a word. The house felt colder than usual. The clock ticked above the fridge, steady and unforgiving. Linda's scarf still hung on the back of a chair where she had left it 2 nights before, its lavender scent clinging to the air. "Dad," Sarah said finally, "we might have to take her to court." The word hung there, heavier than anything I'd heard yet. I stared at the wood grain of the table, the scratches from years of meals, homework, conversations that once mattered. "She's your mother," I whispered. "She's not acting like a mother," Sarah said. Her voice was tight, her hands clenched around a pen. "She's signing away our lives to people who don't care if we starve. If we wait, they'll take everything." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I can file for guardianship, but you'll have to testify. You'll have to say she isn't capable anymore." The words cut deeper than I expected. To say it aloud in front of strangers. To stand in a room and declare that the woman I built a life with no longer understood reality. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a dog barked. Somewhere down the block, children were shouting, chasing each other through the damp air. I closed my eyes. Let me think. That night, Linda came home later than usual. I was sitting in the living room, the lamp on, the manila envelope still hidden in the basement. She brushed past me without speaking, carrying another folder under her arm. As she walked upstairs, she said softly, almost like to herself, "Soon, Christopher. Soon we'll all be free." The words chilled me. When the house was quiet, I checked my phone. Transfer, $21,000. Vendor, Community Friends Association. I set the phone down face first, but the glow of the number burned through the dark anyway. I sat in a different office this time. Not the tidy beige room from before, but a cramped place above a bakery. The smell of bread and sugar drifting through the vents. The lawyer was younger, sharp suit, quick movements. He flipped through Sarah's folder like he had done this 100 times. "You want guardianship," he said. "That means petitioning the court to take decision-making away from your wife. Finances, medical, everything." His words felt heavy, as though they pressed against my chest. I stared at the diploma on the wall, the frame slightly crooked. "She won't fight it," I muttered. I wanted to believe it. The lawyer looked up. "She will. They always do. And she won't be alone. Whoever she's tied to now, they'll give her counsel. They'll coach her. It won't be you against her, Mr. Collins. It'll be you against all of them." The hum of the bakery ovens filled the silence. My hands rested on my knees, clammy against the fabric of my pants. "Do you understand what that means?" the lawyer asked. I nodded, though my throat was tight. That evening, back home, I sat in the living room as Linda moved around upstairs. I could hear her drawers sliding open, the faint thud of boxes being shifted. On the street outside, kids rode bicycles in circles, their voices carrying through the open window. A neighbor watered his lawn, the smell of damp earth drifting in. The ordinary world kept turning, steady and bright. Linda came down the stairs carrying a small suitcase. She set it by the door without looking at me. "Just for the weekend," she said calmly. "The retreat. You'll be fine without me." The suitcase handle gleamed in the lamplight. I didn't answer. When she stepped outside, my phone buzzed in my hand. Transfer, $24,500. Vendor, Community Friends Association. The suitcase wheels rattled over the porch steps. The sound stayed in my ears long after the door closed. The house was silent after she left. Her suitcase gone, her scarf missing from the chair, the faint lavender smell fading from the air. I walked through each room as if to confirm she wasn't hiding somewhere. The bed was stripped, her side of the closet half empty. By Saturday morning, Sarah arrived. She set her coat on the back of a chair and looked around the kitchen. "It feels different," she said. The clock ticked loud on the wall. I poured coffee into 2 mugs, the chipped one for me, the clean one for her. The steam rose between us, carrying the bitter scent. She took a suitcase, I told her. Sarah's jaw tightened. She opened her folder again, though I knew there was nothing new inside. The papers were creased, some corners torn. She flipped through them anyway, as if the numbers might change. "We can't wait anymore, Dad," she said. "They're stripping her. They're stripping us. If she signs the house over while she's gone, it's done. There won't be anything left." I looked at her, at the determination in her face. She was her mother's daughter once, same eyes, same sharpness, but now she carried only fear and anger. "What are you saying?" I asked. Sarah lowered her voice. "If she won't come back on her own, we may have to bring her back. Force her. If we have to." The words chilled me more than the cold draft seeping through the window. That night I sat in the living room with the lamp on, staring at the photographs on the wall. Family trips, birthdays, Christmas mornings. Her smile in every frame. Through the window I saw the Hendersons returning from dinner, their children running up the walkway, coats open, faces flushed from the cold. Their laughter filled the street. Inside, my phone buzzed. Transfer. $28,900. Vendor Community Friends Association. Non-to you. The glow of the screen lit my hands as I held it. Bring her back, even if it means by force. We drove out on Sunday, the road stretching gray under a low sky. Sarah sat beside me, her folder closed on her lap for once. She didn't look at it. Just stared out the window as fields and bare trees passed by. The heater hummed, filling the silence between us. The address she'd found led us 30 miles outside town. No signs, no markers. Just a gravel drive cutting through woods that seemed darker than the day around them. At the end stood a cluster of cabins, fresh paint on the walls, curtains drawn, a banner hung between 2 posts. Community Friends, Annual Retreat. Cars filled the dirt lot, lined up neat in rows. People carried bags inside, smiling, their voices carrying in the cold air. From one cabin came the smell of soup, from another the faint sound of a guitar. It looked almost harmless, like a summer camp left running through winter. Then I saw her. Linda stood near the steps of the main cabin, talking to Daniel, the tall man who had come to our house. She wore a bright scarf I'd never seen before. Her hair pinned back the way she used to when she was younger. She laughed at something he said. The sound drifted across the lot, light, unbroken. Sarah gripped my arm. "Dad." Linda turned, as if sensing us. For a second, our eyes met across the distance. But she didn't wave. She didn't call out. She just looked at us, the way you might look at strangers watching from a car window. Then she turned back to Daniel. I felt Sarah's hand trembling against my sleeve. "Do you see it now?" she whispered. "She's not coming back." We stayed in the car until the cold crept through the vents. Around us the retreat buzzed with life doors opening and closing, voices rising, the clatter of dishes from inside the cabins. At last, Sarah pulled her coat tighter and said, "If we want to save anything, we have to move fast. Legally, or..." She didn't finish the sentence. I started the engine. The sound of gravel under the tires seemed too loud as we turned back toward the road. My phone buzzed in the console. Transfer. $32,000. Vendor. Community Friends Association. I kept my eyes on the road, the number burning in my mind. The house was colder when we came back that night. The porch light had burned out, leaving the front steps in shadow. Inside, the living room smelled faintly of dust, the air stale as if no one lived there anymore. Sarah set her coat over the back of a chair and didn't bother with her folder this time. She just sat at the table, her hands flat against the wood, her eyes fixed on nothing. I walked through the rooms in silence. Each space felt emptier than the last. The closet, with her dresses half gone, the bathroom shelf cleared of her lotions, the bed stripped bare on her side. The house had already started to forget her. When I came back to the kitchen, Sarah was still staring at the table. "Dad," she said quietly, "if we wait, we lose everything." Money, the house, her. She looked up at me, her voice breaking. Maybe we've already lost her. I poured water into a glass and set it down, the sound echoing too loudly in the stillness. For 40 years I had built this life piece by piece. A house, a family, a future. And in less than a year, it was being peeled away, signed over, erased. Not by strangers, but by the woman I once trusted most. I stood at the window. Outside, the Hendersons' porch light was still on. Their children were inside now, their laughter muffled by walls that held steady. Their world was intact. Mine was not. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Transfer. $35,600. Vendor. Community Friends Association. I didn't flinch this time. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and turned toward Sarah. No more waiting, I said. My voice was steady, colder than I expected. They've taken enough. They won't take everything. Sarah watched me, her eyes widening. She nodded slowly, almost in relief. The refrigerator hummed in the silence. Outside, a dog barked once. Then the street fell quiet again. In that stillness, I felt it settle inside me. The end of patience. The beginning of something else. That night I lay awake in the dark, the ceiling faintly lit by the glow of a street lamp outside. The house creaked in the wind. The kind of sound that once comforted me. Now it only reminded me how thin the walls really were. I thought about the papers hidden in the basement, the box under the blanket. I thought about the sound of her laughter at the retreat, carried across the cold air to where I stood. Somewhere, in one of those cabins, she was sleeping peacefully, believing she had found a new family. And here, in the house we built, I understood at last. She would never choose to come back. The question was no longer if I would act. It was when. The street lamp flickered once, then steadied. I closed my eyes, already knowing the answer. Thank you for watching Final Truth. Your support means the world to us. If this story kept you hooked until the end, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every day we bring you new tales of family secrets, hidden motives, and twists you won't see coming. Turn on notifications so you never miss the moment the truth comes out. And remember, here at Final Truth, every ending is just the start of another story.